Okay, ready? Okay. All right, everybody, this is my dad, and I'm gonna interview him about his experience when he was 12 with segregation, and then he's gonna tell you a little bit more about when he was a little bit older. His name is Tom Higgins. Okay, Dad. Amelia asks, was segregation a scary time for you?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I didn't know very much about segregation. We had a few black people in our community, in my school, and they were accepted like anybody else at that time.
Okay, so it wasn't really scary at that time?
No, but it wasn't until a year later, when I was 13, we went on a trip. I went on a trip with my parents to Texas to visit my uncle and his family. My uncle was a chemistry professor at Texas Women's University. And on that trip, we went through the deep South, through Mississippi and Alabama, and Louisiana. And it was a real eye-opener for me to see how many of the black people lived, because there were a lot of shacks that looked like they would blow away in the slightest windstorm. Just metal piled up, and it would look like it would be very sturdy, very poor. And I became aware then that there were segregated lunch counters and segregated drinking fountains, segregated bathrooms. I remember in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the capital of Mississippi, seeing these things and couldn't understand why they had to be segregated.
And you were living in where at the time? New Jersey or
I
Pennsylvania?
lived in Pennsylvania,
And you didn't see a lot of
southeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so it was more of a southern.
Trenton, New Jersey, which was further down along the Delaware River, was where I was born. And there was a sizable black community there, but not in the immediate town, the New Hope where I lived.
There are a few more questions these kids have. One of them, we read that in Rosa Parks' narrative that the blacks were treated badly. So Enzo asked, did you treat black people badly? If so, did you feel guilt? If you didn't treat them badly, do you think those who did felt guilt?
Well, I would hope that some of those people would feel some sense of guilt. I do, unfortunately, remember riding on the school bus, and I can't remember exactly what age I was, but it would have been around that same time. There were a couple black girls, and people tended to avoid them. They tended not to want to sit with them, and I feel guilty about that I didn't befriend them. But I did have there was a young man who was my age, who was black, and he and I became good friends. And then later he moved away and moved to St. Louis, Missouri, and then came back later in high school and graduated with our class. And he was accepted, like any other member of the class.
That's good. Ellie S. asked, what was it like having blacks and whites separated, which you didn't really see until you went to Texas, right?
Well, yeah, I really wasn't aware of it until I traveled through the Deep South. And as I said, I couldn't understand why there was that separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gabby asks, if you saw people treating blacks badly, would you have helped them? And badly, I guess, could be, I think she means
I
really
think
bad.
I would have stood up for them.
Yeah. Sarah asks, did you have any black friends who were separated from you?
Who were what?
Were separated from you. So made to use a different bathroom or something, I guess. But in your case, that wasn't the case, right? Because the black friend you had was allowed to go everywhere where you went, right?
Right, and I think I went to my friend's home.
Oh, yeah. Caitlin asks, did you see blacks getting arrested on the news?
I wasn't aware of it so much when I was 12 or 13, but you know, in later years I was conscious of it, and particularly when I finished high school and went to college. It was in the 1960s, and I went to college in Tennessee, and that time civil rights was very prominent in the news, and I was very aware of the discrimination then, and the people who you know beat the blacks when they were protesting. And even in my college, which was very accepting of all races and prided itself on diversity, we had a black speaker, a man, come to lecture at the school, and the members of the Ku Klux Klan protested at the gates of the college in their Ku Klux Klan robes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do recall there was segregation in that town, and I remember going into a store that wouldn't serve black people, and I put shoe polish, I think it was shoe polish, on my arm, my hand, and I reached in front of somebody else to the counter to, you know, pretend that I was a black person.
Just to see what would happen.
I don't recall.
Were you in college?
I was in college,
Yeah.
a freshman in college, I think. But it was our little joke. But
That's so funny. What did the person do? Did anyone do anything?
I don't know. I
You
don't
were just saying,
remember
am I going to
if
college
they
rocket?
chased us away or what. But
College pranks.
Yeah.
Neftali asks, did you ever see Rosa Parks in real life or on the news?
Saw her on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that would have been like around the time that she refused to give up her seat, right? You would have been 12.
I believe so.
Yeah. So it made the news. Amelia asks, did you ever feel like you were in danger the way black people felt about someone breaking into their house? Because Rosa Parks talked about her family not feeling safe, that they would stay up all night sometimes.
No, I never felt that way.
We were fortunate to not feel that way. Did you fear, this is Jolie, says, did you fear black people or feel like you were better than them, or did you feel equal?
I think there was fear of going into some neighborhoods, maybe not feeling comfortable with our own safety. But as I say, I really didn't have much occasion to do so anyway because of where I lived.
Yeah, and the one person that you knew who was black was your friend.
We had a teacher in my high school who was black, and he was murdered in Trenton. Apparently he had apartments or something. He was going to collect rent, and somebody murdered him. And I don't know if it was another black person or who it was, but there was, fear about those neighborhoods.
So that was a dangerous neighborhood where he had those apartments?
I think so.
Okay. So when we were reading this narrative, Rosa Parks talked about the white kids on the bus throwing trash at the black kids who were walking to school. So Bryson asks, did you see people throwing trash at black people?
I did not.
That's good. It happened, but you didn't see it, which is good. Jimena asks, did you see black people getting beaten?
Only on the television
Mm,
or in newspaper photographs.
yeah. Amelia asks, she has 3 questions here. Amelia asks, did you ever help a black person?
Help a black
Yeah,
person?
help a black person. Maybe I'll go back to the girl on the bus, but
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any particular people I might have helped.
yeah.
I did when I was in graduate school at the University of Wisconsin. Somebody, another student I knew, asked me one day if I wanted to go to Milwaukee to participate in a march about equal rights. And so I said, sure, I'll go. So I went to, that weekend, went to Milwaukee, and we marched in a neighborhood where a lot of blacks lived in low-income housing, and they were being forced out by some of the breweries in Milwaukee. They wanted to take over the real estate for their businesses. So we protested, against those businesses. And I do recall standing on a street corner and some, white couples coming by and shouting at us. They didn't agree with us.
I see. Neftali had a follow-up question. What would have happened to you if you helped a black person? And that's kind of what you just talked about.
Yeah. Well, again, it would depend on the circumstances. There were people who, from the north, who traveled to the south in the 1960s for voter registration to get black people registered to vote, and there was one particular incident where 3 of these workers were murdered.
That's terrible. So bad things could have happened if you helped a black person. Enzo asks, did you ever see a black person being mistreated and wonder why you could do the same thing they were doing but not be mistreated?
Again, not personally.
Okay. And then Ellie asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much better did you think that life was for a white person than a black person? On a scale of 1 to 10.
I don't know. That's hard to judge.
Yeah.
I'd say at least an 8 for white people.
Yeah. And then my very last question is from Bryson. He says, since Mrs. Henderson technically adopts us for 7 hours a day, are you our honorary grandfather?
Yeah, yes, I am.
So yes, Bryson.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for answering all their questions, Dad. That was great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Adam.